Good morning, Galaxians, and welcome to another live edition of the Galaxy CDs Rocks and Flips Reseller Talk podcast. In today's episode, I am joined by a very special guest, my good friend, Annette. Excess Baggage is here to talk to us about all things Poshmark.
Hi.
So, how are you?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
Good, good. So, let everybody know a little bit about yourself for people who may not know who you are and your socials and stuff. I've talked about on this show before how much I really like your Instagram account. Even though I don't sell that kind of stuff, I always find it really interesting. But let people know a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I'm Annette from Excess Baggage. I'm a trained handbag designer turned full-time reseller. And I specialize in selling women's fashion. And my Instagram account is all about accessories, handbags, leather goods, and flipping them for a profit. I do a lot of content on how to clean up and rehab leather goods to flip for a profit. And I talk about what a great category it is to resell in, how it resells for more money than other fashion categories. And I do primarily sell on Poshmark, but I also sell on other platforms as well. And I do also talk a little bit about Poshmark strategy and reselling strategy on the page. Um, yeah, I think that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. So, mostly Poshmark. What percentage of your business would you say is Poshmark?
At least 50% or more. It's my
Okay.
highest volume platform. Interestingly, Etsy is my highest average
Right.
dollar platform, but I don't sell very frequently over there. But when I do, it's very high
Yeah.
dollar. So it's a little skewed. But definitely Poshmark is my main platform where I do my most volume.
Yeah, I talk about that pretty regularly. My Etsy margins and average selling price are probably three times what I
Hmm.
do on eBay, but unfortunately, it's like 15% of my business where eBay is 80. So the math ain't mathin', but
Right.
it's
Yeah.
it's it's whatever. So let me say hello, some hellos here this morning. Big Dre is joining us. Welcome to the show, Liz O'Kane. Good morning. I'm sure you'll have some thoughts on the whole Poshmark thing as well. Jennifer Raybod, good morning. She loves Poshmark. Curious to know how everybody's doing since all the changes. Kapow Eagle says good morning. And Mel is here as well. Good morning. Thanks for coming out. So, one more sneaking in here. Den Decor Depot. Good morning. So, talk to me about this Poshmark thing. So, they rolled this thing out last week. If you're not familiar, they made some changes to their fee structure
Yes, they
and they
did.
went from essentially 20% charged solely to sellers to this multi-tiered, really kind of convoluted program where, if I'm not mistaken, things under $15 get a $1 flat fee plus 5.99%.
Yep.
From there to $49.99, it's
Yes.
two bucks plus the same, and then anything over $50 is $3 flat plus again that 5.99.
Correct.
What was your initial reaction when you saw that?
Well, I was thrilled that they were making a change, frankly. I was not expecting this. I would not have guessed this change in a million years. And of course, as soon as I saw the 5.99%, I was like, why? Why wouldn't you just do 6%? Like, just can we keep the numbers whole at least so that
That's
I
an
can,
old like retailing 101. You price everything ending in 99 because it's psychologically it's
ah,
$9, not 10. You know what I mean? It's
yes.
goofy, but yeah, I understand. It just makes the math that much more difficult.
Well, and the accounting behind the scenes. One of the things I loved about Poshmark is that you could always predict what you were going to make on a sale. When you're negotiating before that sale comes in, you were always able to think about it really quickly in your head, or just even on the app, they would show you like estimated earnings as
Right.
you are going through that offer flow with the customer. And initially, it was so much information to take in. But once I finally processed it, I started to realize like that was gone. Like we really
Right.
can't estimate what we're going to be making anymore until the sale actually comes in. And so for me, that was the first moment where I was like, oh, okay, this might not be as good as they're telling us it is. Like,
Right. So was
Hmm.
the old fee 20% just on the selling price of the item, or did it
Yes.
include taxes and shipping as well? Because that seems to be the thing that most people are having the hardest time getting the
Hmm.
math to work out, is you don't really know what somebody's tax rate is going to be, which makes that
Exactly.
math very difficult.
Yeah, in the old structure, it was just 20% off the price of the item. And in the new structure, you are paying 1, 2, or $3 depending on the price. And then the 5.99% on the order total, which they define as the shipping and the sales tax where the buyer is located. And so, of course, we don't know where your buyer is going to be
Right.
located when they purchase from you or when you're negotiating. Um,
Right. It could be zero. It could be 8, 9, 10%, depending on
Yeah,
where
I
they're at.
believe the highest is 7.25%, and that's for California. So for California buyers, it's been a little rough, since I don't know when they've, made that change, but they've had the highest sales tax of any other state. So I don't think it'll be higher than that, but it's still quite a significant, percentage because it could be anything from a couple of, cents to a dollar or 2 in
Right.
terms of the price that you're actually going to be profiting from your item. The other element here is they've introduced a new program at the same time of all these changes. It's called Posh Pass.
Right.
And if you're a Poshmark ambassador, you're automatically been enrolled in Posh Pass till the end of the year. And so far, all it is basically they are making everything in your closet have $5.95 shipping, which is nice. That's nice for buyers, and it does help out sellers because now our fees are being calculated based off of the shipping cost as well as a couple other things. So, it's free until the end of the year right now,
Right.
but who knows what's going to happen after the new year? Are they going to start charging us for that? Um, the flip side as well is that if you are not a Posh ambassador, you seem to still be on the old structure for shipping. So $7.97 was their full price shipping. So now, if you're a customer and you're buying from somebody who doesn't have Posh Pass, you're
Right.
paying technically higher fees because their shipping fee is higher.
Right. So you're paying more upfront already for shipping, and then you're paying an additional, let's just call it 6%.
Thank you.
On top of that, which I mean,
Yes.
it's whatever, it's 36 cents or, not even, it's
Ugh,
$2 difference. So it's not, but it's just, you start adding all that stuff up and you get sticker shock as a buyer when you go to the cart. That was the big thing with Mercari when
yes.
they made that change, and it was hidden away. It wasn't, you didn't even know about it until you got to the shopping cart and you saw all of these additional fees, and you're like, whoa, wait a minute. This thing was $25 and now it's $33.
Mhm.
I'm out. So
Yeah.
are you seeing any of that kind of pushback from customers at your shop?
The only way that I would really be able to gauge that is to compare how many offers are coming in or how many sales are coming in. And it's been such a short amount of time. I don't really think it's really actually been about a week. I haven't seen like a surge in sales. I haven't seen a surge in offers. So I would say it's about the same right now or maybe less. Personally, I'm more worried about this driving away sellers. And let me tell you why. It's as people have been processing this, it's been sort of talked about in the community that this new structure is very advantageous for higher dollar sales. So once you're
Yes.
past the $100 mark,
Right.
it's actually great. You're paying almost 50% less in fees than you used to. So what does that mean for lower dollar sales? What does that mean for volume sellers that were on the platform? It's really not incentivizing them at all.
Right.
Um,
I was going to say, one of the things in the initial press release talked about wanting to incentivize sellers to sell lower priced goods. But when I did the math,
really?
with the $1 flat fee on under $16 is a substantial percentage of,
Yeah.
it's 10% of a $10 item.
Mhm.
And then you add in the rest, and all of a sudden it's really there's a lot of fee there.
Yes.
I when I initially saw it, my reaction was that $1 at that dollar level is too much. But
I can't disagree with you at all there. And I'm a little shocked because I thought that this change would benefit um lower dollar sales, because that's when you have a Poshmark show, a lot of people do low starts.
right,
$3 starts, even $1 starts sometimes. And of course you do that in the hopes that you will bring in more people and make a lot of sales and people will bid up your item. But a lot of times if you don't have a huge following coming to your shows, you sell things at your start price and it can really kill you in the margins.
right. I'm about to find out on Whatnot how that goes because I'm doing all $1 starts.
Well, luckily their fee structure is a little different over there. But yeah, I did a couple of shows last month just to try to liquidate some inventory, and that was under the old fee structure, and I was
Right.
getting killed with that 295 um like flat rate they had for items under $15, because I was selling things at $10 in an attempt to try to get things moving. So I thought initially, like, okay, this $1 fee and 6% on the order total, it's got to be better than that 295. But as you just pointed out, it really isn't.
Right.
So I gotta wonder, what is the strategy here, Poshmark? Like, why are you de-incentivizing lower dollar
Yeah.
business models or sales, right? That's why, going back to what I was saying before, I'm more worried that this is going to drive sellers to other platforms,
Right.
eBay, Etsy, Grailed, Curtsy, all these different places where there's lower fees, it's simpler, and you can still, it's still worth it for both the buyer and the seller to list those lower dollar items. That
And
being said,
I was going to say, I
higher
think
dollar items, yeah.
you hit on something with the simpler part because
Yeah.
as an eBay seller, eBay is really complicated. I mean, everything from listing and item specifics to shipping to, the whole 9 yards. And that's one of the things that scares
Mhm.
potential, mom and pop hobby sellers away from it. And I feel like this is a
Mhm.
step in that direction. It's made it so much more difficult for someone who does not do this for a living, let alone people who do it for a living, to
Oh,
figure
man.
out, can I sell this thing for $10 and am I going to make any money if I do? And that would be, I think, cause a lot of hesitation for those kind of casual sellers.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I think we're unfortunately gonna see platforms trend more this way, and it's gonna cause some kind of re-education among the consumer base, because we still have a lot of shoppers, in my opinion, coming onto the platforms, treating it like a yard sale, a garage sale, a Facebook marketplace exchange. And they're just wanting those like yard sale prices. And really, when you're selling on eBay, these third-party platforms, Poshmark, there's a lot more that goes into getting an item up on those platforms than it does to just, drag a couple of things outside
Right.
and sell them for a couple of dollars, right? So
Right.
it's a
Well, and you
little
got
bit of
nobody taking 10, 15, 20% of your cut at your garage sale either.
exactly, exactly. Plus, are you inspecting the items? Are you testing them to make sure they work? Do they have holes? Do they need to be cleaned? All of that stuff goes into listing, as particularly if you're a fashion seller like me. Like, I really need to inspect my items so that I can steward them once they go up on the site, right? Because I'm
Right.
responsible if it's dirty, if there's a hole, if I missed something. I've got to sort of shepherd that item through this whole process. So I'm thinking about that as I'm sourcing. Is this an item that I can back and stand up for, and that it's going to be desirable enough that people are going to want to pay for it? It's worth it for me to take the time to stage it on my mannequin and take
Right.
measurements and do all this stuff. So it's not the same as, well, I have this used item, I'll just sell it for a couple of dollars.
Right.
And I think that educational part is missing from the larger consumer base. But as these changes happen, they're going to come onto these platforms and be like, oh, wow. So if I want to buy this $50 item, it's going to cost me $13 more to buy it.
Right.
Like, is it worth it for me? Maybe I will go to the store myself, or maybe I will just wait for a yard sale to buy these items, because there is a cost associated with getting them up online. And I don't think that that's quite the connection that a lot of people have made yet.
Right. I kind of had that conversation when I had David Lee from Mercari on the show a few weeks ago. And he was like, buyers are paying these fees and it just hasn't been transparent. So now I guess everybody's trying to be a little more transparent in his way of thinking about what the fees are that are involved for the transaction to take place. So that used to be just borne by the seller. And
Right.
now you're seeing some sites go fully to buyer paid, some like Poshmark doing some kind of split the baby strategy where both parties are paying some kind of fee.
Yes,
So it's probably really eye opening for people who are not involved in the business.
absolutely. It really is eye opening. I think, you know, with Mercari, a lot of people have said good things, that overall their business is doing okay or better than before their change. And I think we're going to see the same with Poshmark.
Right.
I'm not really afraid that people won't buy. I was talking to my partner about this the other day. One thing is always true: people are going to buy what they want, what they desire. And if you have something people really want, they're going to figure out a way to pay for it. That's never going to change. And if you think about it, there's other industries that are doing this. When you think about like Uber Eats or DoorDash,
Sure.
right? They're charging you a ton of fees for their service, and people are paying it because they want the convenience, they want the
Right.
service. So, yes, will we see customers turned away? I'm sure that's definitely going to happen, but we will still see people paying for the things that they want. And so what I'm seeing or predicting is this is going to drive away a lot of low dollar volume sellers off the platform. And then the competition is going to become super fierce, between the more high
Right.
profit per unit sellers, who are really going to, it's going to change the sourcing game, because now it's like, on top of all the effort to get your item onto the platform and get it sold, you really need to have items that people want, that people will be willing to pay $100 and then another extra 15 or whatever it is
Right.
in fees to get it to them. Like, you really have to have desirable items. So sourcing, it's going to get challenging, even more challenging than it's been in the past.
Yeah. Let me hop into the chat here and hit a few things. Liz
Yeah.
says it's goofy, but Poshmark can only list in whole dollars. So yeah, 5.99, but you can't price your thing at
Oh, very
5.99.
good
You got to
point,
be
Liz.
$6. Talking about tax rates, 9.55 in LA, 8.25 plus the 29-cent online order fee here in Colorado.
That's true. Yes.
There's
Some
also
municipalities have higher ones. Yep.
Yep, one of those that was just introduced not too long ago in Minnesota as well. So there's a lot of additional fees for kind of shipping
Oof.
stuff into these states. So again, this stuff all just starts to accumulate, and a lot of it again is not super transparent. Like I
No.
know, for instance, eBay just rolls those locality fees into what they call sales tax. So you're not seeing an extra line item there, which is kind of interesting.
What?
Some states pay taxes on shipping and others don't. This is also another area where there's been a lot of confusion because
Oh,
it feels like some platforms just charge it for everybody, charge tax on shipping. And I know some states that is not supposed to happen. I think eBay is another one that's a little notorious for that. Posh borrowed the calculation from eBay, says Miss Lachey. Lord Jake Ryan says they want people to sell cheaper things so that they can make more money from them. Yeah, but if the math doesn't work for a seller or for a buyer, then nothing gets sold and nobody makes any money until something gets sold. So I'm
Mhm.
not convinced that this was the way to go with that. I can see, maybe the 599 with no flat fee for that under $16 thing. And then if you want to add in the couple bucks, but that it sounds ridiculous. That dollar, man, that's pushing me over the edge. But I feel like at that price point,
Yeah.
it's a big chunk. Liz said, I sold a $10 item yesterday. Fees were less than before. Total fees, Liz, or just fees for you? Because
Mm,
I think this is another area where a lot of the folks are squawking, and you and I talked a little bit about it offline. Um, the overall percentage in a lot of cases under $100 that Poshmark is collecting has gone up significantly. In some cases, it's as high as 28% now instead of 20, which they're a for-profit business. They're allowed to make money,
yeah.
but this whole thing was presented as kind of a reduction in fees. And people are doing the math and saying, hey, wait a minute, my fees are a little bit less, but what you're actually collecting because you're getting it from both parties has gone up. So give me your thoughts on that.
I'm not mad about it. I really am not. Like you said, they're a business. Of course, I fully expect them to want to and need to make more money as time goes by. I'm more concerned about what are they charging me as a seller, which again, to Liz's point, it is lower. It is lower in many cases, even though they are, you know, doing this new calculation, including the shipping, including the sales tax. It is lower. So that's why I don't think that we won't see everybody off the platform, but for lower dollar sales, it's really not that great. I mean, I guess it depends on what you're selling. Poshmark is mainly fashion. I can't imagine what fashion item I would list for 10, 15, $20. It'd be worth all of my time to source that item, to prep it, to get it photographed, listed, get it up on the platform, get it researched. Like I do take quite a bit of time in that I
Right.
put into my listing. So what items are those people selling? I don't know. Maybe that's still worth it for them. But I'm not mad that they're making more money. They needed to. Poshmark, a lot of people don't realize Poshmark wasn't making a profit and they were losing a lot of money because of the way their shipping structure is set up, which a lot of people love
Right.
that about Poshmark. It's
Yep.
so easy. You just sell an item and they send you the label, right?
Right. That's what I was going to say. Going back to the eBay example,
Yeah,
where you've got to set up your shipping rates and you've got to know your weights and your sizes, as opposed to, hey, whatever it is, here's a label. It's $5.95 or whatever on the Posh Pass. That's a loser for them in a lot of cases, I would have to think.
absolutely. And Poshmark is also known for refunding both the customer and the seller when there's a dispute. That's going to cost them money. If you accidentally ship an item to a customer and it was the wrong item and now it needs to get reshipped again, they would provide that label.
Yep.
If you had an item returned, and correct me if I'm wrong, anybody out there, but as far as I could tell, if you were accepting a return and the item total cost gets refunds, but the shipping cost was not refunded, it doesn't come out. It's not like eBay where if you take a return back, you need to also pay out that shipping fee again, even though you've already spent it and it's not coming back to you. On Poshmark, they never charged you that. So they were paying for that. Um, there's a lot of things like that they were losing money on in order to provide this great experience that people love. So it totally makes sense to me that they would raise their overall fee and try to close that gap.
Yep. Liz says, my initial thought was this is BS, but willing to sit on my hands and see what happens. Had a $1,200 weekend on Posh. Half were full price sales. So there you go. She adds,
Wow.
it's cooled down the last couple of days, but still getting regular sales. And I've seen some other people on Instagram and various places saying that their sales have been really, really good. So much like when mercari did this, like you mentioned earlier,
Mhm.
some sellers were saying, hey, my business is way up. Mine, I had like a 10-day period where it was pretty well down and then it leveled off and everything has been essentially the same as it was before. So
Yeah.
it's been interesting. Jennifer Raybod says, congrats on the great weekend. Yeah, that's killer.
Ooh.
Getting a ton of likes, but they're not converting great. I'm a PA, so I have the discount shipping as well. Black Cat Flips just popping on to say hi. Catch the replay. Thank you so much. Liz O'Kane, my fees were less. So there you
Mhm.
go. Again, though, I wonder if you did the math on the total fee, what it would end up. And again, not that that's necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
And there are going to be those low dollar sellers. I'm one of those on eBay. I sell a lot of $4, $5, $6 plus shipping books because I'm into them for 10 cents a piece or whatever. So it's still a profitable venture for me. And
Yes.
it's not as time consuming as working with a piece of clothing where you might need to clean it, press it, fix it. What books, I take 12 pictures and I list it and I'm on to the next. So it's a little bit different world. I can get away with that. But
Yes,
Liz says Posh is absolutely making more
of
money on
course.
this. My fees are lower, but it's a lot to ask for a buyer, especially on those lower dollar items. And
Mhm.
that's would be my big concern. $10 were never worth it for Liz. However, the home books, etc., and clearance items will sell for that price, and high volume sellers. Yeah, if you're doing a ton of volume, again, like with me and the books, or you've got like just dirt cheap cost of goods sold,
Yeah.
you can kind of get away with that. But I would feel like that's not really Posh's business. You can help me if I'm miseducated on that, but I feel like that is not what they've always been about. They want a little, not necessarily super high end, but they're not looking for $5 t-shirts.
In the beginning, and I'm talking about the very beginning of their app, they were women's fashion only. And that was
Right.
fantastic. I remember those days. That was fantastic because it almost created this like very targeted consumer base to the platform, right? You were only really women shopping on the platform and you were looking for clothing, shoes, accessories. And over the years, they have tried to compete with Mercari and eBay by adding all these additional categories. Now you can sell in electronics over there, you can sell home goods, all this stuff. I didn't think that was the move. I thought they had something special when they were just women's fashion. And maybe yeah, open it up to men's and maybe kids as well. That's fine. It's still sort of in the same family. But I thought they really had an advantage there because it really brought people to the platform that were looking for those specific kinds of items. And now it's sort of become a free for all. And I don't know why. And eBay is guilty of this too. Everybody's comparing themselves to Amazon and trying to compete with that model when it's really, to me, like two different things.
Yeah.
What made eBay special in my mind was that it was all of these random sellers coming together on the internet, and you could find all these strange and interesting and cool
Right.
and rare things. And the kind of the same for Poshmark, right? In the beginning, you could find all these cool, interesting, rare fashion pieces that people were listing over there. But for some reason, maybe it's a money grab. I mean, let's be honest, it's probably a money grab.
Right. Well,
um,
yeah, because you feel like I agree with you. I feel like niching down
yeah,
there would be to your benefit as opposed to trying to be. I don't know why anybody competes with Amazon. Uh, you're not in the same game. You don't have the same bandwidth to compete. So find
exactly.
your niche and like maximize it. I get that you might see things maybe from a customer service or from a shipping standpoint or whatever that you might incorporate into your business, but just trying to add additional categories to capitalize on money. Like when I think of buying whatever, a piece of electronics, I know Poshmark because I do this has those, but if I wasn't in this business, I would have I would never go to Poshmark for electronics. I'm going to go to Amazon. I'm going to go to eBay. Maybe I'll go to Reverb or you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
Poshmark is not top of mind. And I don't see a lot of marketing that pushes that. And again, it's probably
No.
such a small piece of their business. They can't justify spending any money on it either. That's just a
It's like,
weird mix.
why spread yourself thin in that direction that's not even really your direction?
Right.
where stay with your strength and grow that. And that's what I think Poshmark should have done, and even eBay. They're, I think, currently in the middle of trying to rectify that themselves. Um, because it's different, and that's okay. Like, different is not something to be
Right.
scared of. It is your strength. It is why people come to you and not somewhere else.
When
um,
we talk about that, when we're like, whatever, talking amongst ourselves as resellers, find your niche. Don't try to sell everything. If you're
Yes.
I'm a book guy. You're a fashion seller. I mean, there are people, there are some who are jack of all trades and just have all kinds of stuff. But to be really successful, one of the big tips they always say is to niche down, find your thing, whatever the thing you're passionate about, the thing you know about, and
Yes.
focus on that and be successful in that. Yet the platforms have just kind of thrown that out with I don't get it.
I agree with you. It's so much more powerful to niche down, and you're able to streamline so many things. I mean, you were even saying before how quickly you're able to list books, and when you go to a sale for books, I'm sure you can eyeball that sale, and you know exactly what things you're interested in looking
Right,
a little bit more, or maybe perhaps looking up, and what things you're just like, oh, that's not
right,
going to make me any money. You're able to do that, right? Because you've been training your eye over all these years that you've been running your business. And that's a huge advantage when you're, in a time crunch, or you're at a yard sale, or you're, even sourcing online, being able to look at something in a photo that maybe is not listed correctly. But
right,
because you're a bookseller, that's a rare one, or that's a special one, or that I can flip that for more money. um, Huge advantages to doing that. And I think it also is advantageous to the platforms, because that creates sellers that are really knowledgeable and really educated in what they're selling. So their listings are more likely to be accurate. They're able to offer things with more correct information, probably better pictures, because they've been photographing the same types of items
right,
over time. And that's what platforms always say they want, right? They want great photos, they want accurate listings, they want sellers who really know what they're doing and will ship on time. So who better than a niche down seller?
right. Kapow Eagle says, "What do you sell on Etsy versus Poshmark versus eBay?" So, yeah, what kind of things, and how do you, within a category, how do you differentiate? This one is going to go on site X or Y, or do you list the same things on all of them and just let the chips fall where they may?
Definitely not. I'm very choosy about what I list on the platforms. For me, for Etsy, it's a lot of vintage Coach bags specifically. But I do also do vintage items and clothing over there as well. Although recently I've scaled that back a lot to just bags, because they're the most profitable category for me over there. Um, eBay, I don't sell any fashion over on eBay. eBay is kind of like my health and beauty and my home goods category, and that's just a personal choice. eBay is one of the few platforms that doesn't protect sellers for fit returns, and that's still, knock on wood, something we can still say about Poshmark, Mercari, Grailed. And that's a big deal, I think, for me as a fashion seller. I'm really small. I really cannot afford to be fighting people on returns because they just didn't like it, or because it didn't fit them. I'm happy to take a return for, an oversight, if there's a problem, but I can't be a rental service, right?
Right.
So it's much just my choice. I don't sell fashion over on eBay, but I do pretty well with beauty and health and home. And then Poshmark, I do sell in more categories there, mainly clothing, of course, bags, shoes. I do have a couple of home goods, and oddly, I also do list some health and beauty over there as well. It has to be new. That's the only thing for that category on Poshmark. You can't list like discontinued or like used beauty like you could on Mercari. But over on Poshmark, yeah, sometimes beauty and makeup and stuff like that can do really well.
Yeah. Mercari is a bit of the wild, wild west, except for some of their search term filters. I've listed some books where you just put the title of the book in and it flags it as, profanity or adult content. And I'm
Oh my
like, it's weird. It's bizarre, but there you go. Regina Michelle, welcome.
Happy
How are you? Thanks
Wednesday.
for coming out. Good to see you. So, what are your future plans? So, given what the landscape now looks like, what are you contemplating changes in how you source, how you list, the platforms, your mix? What are you thinking?
Well, everybody right now is saying give it a chance. You got to compare apples to apples. That's tough for me because this is a big chunk of my business. So I don't know how long I can wait to see if this is good or bad in terms of how it's affecting my bottom line. I am gonna, maybe give it a couple weeks. And my initial thoughts are if I'm not seeing regular sales, I'll probably move everything that's listed at $50 or below off the platform and onto other places if it's not there already. And then just see if I can make it sourcing things that I can list at least at $100. Even if they sell for less, if I can list at $100 and make a sale between 50 and 100, I'll probably still pick up those items. And then of course anything 100 and over that I can list is still fair game. But those, that's a tough ask for sourcing. A lot of my sourcing is also moved online. I do still go to thrift stores and the Goodwill bins, but I'm much, much more picky about what I'm picking up. And I feel like as a over my career, I keep saying that every year. I'm much more picky. I'm much more discretionary. And it's just what, you think you've gotten so discretionary. And now it's like narrowing down even more because you really got to think about what's worth it for you as a seller, and
Right.
listen, there may be people out there watching me thinking, well, it's still worth it for me to list a $50 item. And that if that works for your business, great. I'm so happy for you. For me, I'm a one woman show, so I really got limited time every day and I got to think about what items can I source that'll bring in the most profit, that'll make it worth the time that I have to get those items up. But as I said, for now, I'm trying not to make any sudden moves
Right.
because I do want to kind of see how this is going to fare.
What's your experience been on some of the other like alternate platforms that don't have the buyer base even of Poshmark, let
Yeah.
alone comparing them to Etsy or eBay?
It is definitely slower over there, and that's just like you said, just they're just not as well known, or they're still becoming known, or they're so new that people are still getting onto the platform. And we may see a resurgence of that as people move off Poshmark because of this change and decide to list in other places.
Who would
Um,
you think stands to benefit most if a mass number of Poshmark sellers throw up their hands and say, I'm done with this, like you for the say under $50 items? Are they going to go to Depop or are they going to go where would those folks go?
Well, of course, it depends largely on the category you sell in. But for fashion sellers, I think we're going to see a huge amount of people try Depop. Of course, people love eBay, so we're going to see more listings, I think, over on eBay. They're probably over in their office, like
Right.
just like gnashing their hands, smiling. um, Grailed, I think, is one we don't hear talked about enough, but that is an all fashion platform as well. They have low fees, like less than 10%. You can sell internationally on Grailed as well. I don't know if everybody knows that. And they have a fantastic shipping structure for US sellers. It's actually very similar now to Poshmark, where you make a sale and they'll just send you the shipping label for your item, and that's for US sellers only. But I talk about Grilled a lot on my Instagram and also in my subscription on Instagram. I have a whole series on selling on Grilled and Grilled strategy. Great for fashion sellers. Also, okay, one more quick just like tip for your viewers too. If you're a fashion seller and you need something authenticated, Grilled automatically has AI that will screen your listing if it's from a high, what do they call it? A high, like a luxury brand that's
Mhm.
like highly counterfeited. They automatically screen your listing with their AI for free. So if you need authentication and you're listing a luxury item, go list it on Grailed and get a free authentication.
How does that work? Has it been pretty accurate? Because
Oh
in a
yeah.
lot of cases, because you're really good at this, what things are and aren't? Have you ever had anything flagged that was
All the
you thought was
time.
I
Yeah, I would say their AI is pretty good. The one thing it struggles with is maybe vintage luxury items, because vintage luxury can sometimes not have the same, tags or authentication points as modern pieces will. So it is a little funky with the older pieces. But they will screen your listing before it even goes live on their platform. So you'll oftentimes list something and get a notification that'll say, oh, your listing is now live on the platform. And that's because it was probably on their list of high risk brands that are
Mhm.
counterfeited. And so their AI has screened your item. And then if there is an issue, they will come back to you similar to Vestiaire Collective and they'll say, can you add a photo of this tag, or can you add a photo of the inside, or whatever it is they want to see? And then I do believe they have a human component that will review that, which is kind of nice.
Right.
Um, a
'Cause
little,
that's
a
been one
little.
of the big issues with Etsy, whose bots have run amok on
Oh, really?
things that they're identifying as potentially counterfeit or fraudulent, and they're suspending listings, they're suspending sellers.
Oh my God.
It's yeah, their bots have not been very good, and importantly, there's no real human recourse. There's no appeals process. That's one of the things we've been talking about for probably 6 months on and off on this show.
Yeah.
The problems that some Etsy sellers are having with that very thing. So that's why I was curious how well it was working and what the appeals process is. If you know for a fact that a thing is authentic, can you then go back to them and say, "Hey, they're here. It's this, it's that," and do they work
Yes.
with you?
They do, and their customer service is very responsive, at least the couple of times that I've had to engage them. I really feel like it's one of the, like, best kept secret platforms almost in, the fashion resale world, and, you
That's
know
kind of the problem with a lot of them, though.
yeah.
They're too well kept secrets because nobody knows. That's why the buyer bases are so small. And I'm curious if you think something like this situation will cause a significant number of buyers, not just sellers, to start
Mhm.
looking for some of these alternatives.
I do think so. I do think it will drive more sellers off the platform than buyers, and, this is a great opportunity if you're not Poshmark to capitalize, uh, on this. Grailed I've Grailed is really has so many advantages, and I primarily sell internationally on there, believe it or not. I tell people all the time, like, check it out, give it a chance, like, test it out for a couple months, because it's a great alternative to eBay. It's a more focused community. Um, I do hope that this change is going to drive more fashion sellers over to check out places like Grailed, Curtsy, Vestiaire Collective. There's a new one now, District Marketplace, where you can build different marketplaces for different product categories
Right.
or themes. I have one over there now as well that I'm growing, and the fees are way lower. The UX, the user interface, is fantastic. I'm sure these up and young and coming, engineers that are putting out these better platforms. So I do hope that this encourages sellers to try these other places. It's not like the old days where eBay was the only game in town.
Right. Right.
It was either list there or list nowhere.
Yeah. What kind of stuff do you do to drive your own traffic to those sites? Because I know one of the reasons that resellers like a site like eBay or Poshmark is because they do a lot of marketing and they're driving that traffic for their sellers. But on a really small platform, I would venture to guess nobody has probably ever seen a TV ad for Grailed. You know what I
No.
mean? There's no real marketing push there. So what
Yeah.
kind of things would you do or would you suggest to people to do to try to drive their own traffic?
So, what I've done is I've created a lot of social media content around that. For Grailed specifically, I do have some highlights that I think are public. And then in my subscription, I've done a whole series where I've done posts, like almost an educational series, like, talking about the different aspects of the platform. Um, I think that's something people can do on their social media if they want to drive more traffic there. platforms like Depop and Grill that have perhaps in the past enjoyed less popularity are really now stepping up their own social media game. And so
Right.
it's worth it to follow them, see what they're doing. If you can repost something, repost it. But I think the most powerful thing any of us can do is talk about our own experiences with these platforms. I think that a lot of people have joined Grilled because they've just heard me talking about it.
Sure.
I'll post in my stories like, hey, I had this Grailed sale and like, look at the profit margin, or look at how great the breakdown is when you look at the sales receipt, which it's great. They do a great breakdown line by line of like, what's the payment, what's the shipping,
Right.
what's the transaction fee. Um, that's the most powerful thing I think any of us can do is just keep sharing our experiences, keep telling people, I'm using this, it's working for me. You should give it a try. I've always found that, you doing something is going to get more people to do it than you telling people to do something.
Right. Right.
So,
So
yeah.
to shift gears just a little bit,
Sure.
how did you develop your following on Instagram? And I assume that is your biggest.
Instagram is my biggest. I am on TikTok. TikTok is more recent for me. I don't know that I know what I'm doing that well over there.
I'm just
And
posting stuff, like throwing stuff at a wall and
yeah,
just
yeah. Sometimes it's reciprocal. If I have a video I make for Instagram, I see if I can repurpose it over on
right.
TikTok. Lately, I've been doing a lot more custom content over for TikTok. And then I do also have a YouTube, but it's really, really small, and it's a lot of repurposed content as well because it's just so much, to even just
Right.
make one video, and then you've got to do all these different things for these different platforms. I'm sure. So yeah, Instagram is my main social media platform. I have a subscription over there where I do custom, like exclusive content, exclusive stories for my subscribers. And I'm in my stories every day, no matter what. What has grown my base the most, I think, is really niching down into like the
Huh.
content that
You don't say.
people.
We're back to that.
Yeah, we're back to that. Yeah, niching down, if your video gets a great reaction. One piece of advice I've seen people talk about that I think is really helpful is to make sure that you're contributing the three like main types of content. So there's like educational content, relatable content, um, and I forget what the third one is. I think it might be entertainment. And
Right.
so, like, doing different types of content to bring in different people into your space. And I mean, posting regularly helps, but I wouldn't tell people to post every day if you don't have something great to talk
Sure.
about or to post about. If you don't have an idea you feel good about, I don't post every day. I try to keep it quality over there. And but at the same time, like, don't limit yourself. Like, if you've got an interesting idea, like, maybe run with it.
Right.
Not everything you post is going to be perfect. Sometimes it's better to get it out than
Yeah.
to do nothing.
Right.
And like, who cares? Like, people, not everyone's going to see it. Like, there's this perception that like you post something and all of your followers are going to see it, and that's really not happening. Like, there's a small percentage that are seeing.
Yeah.
you know?
I was going to say, I look at my stats and, however many followers, and it got seen by like 18 people. And I'm like, how does that even happen? But
Yeah, yeah.
I hop on to Instagram and I scroll through 15 or 20 posts and then I get on to something else. Like I don't spend all day scrolling. So I know I'm missing a lot of stuff, which is exactly how it happens. But it is frustrating.
It's frustrating, but you know what? It's a gift. It's a secret gift because that means you can continually go back to topics you previously talked about
Right.
because not everyone saw it. So that kind of helps you on days where you can't think of new ideas. Um, and you're able to reinvent yourself all the time. And I
Right.
think the most important thing is when you're creating content, as particularly for TikTok or Instagram, is to try to make it as organic and personable as possible. Like people they want to know like what's going on behind the scenes and what are you struggling with, and not just your wins. Of course we all love a
Right.
win, but it's so much more powerful when a creator comes on and says, I'm struggling with this. And you as a viewer go, oh my gosh, like I'm struggling with that too. Like,
Right.
how are they handling it? Um, People want like a well-rounded,
Yeah.
I think, view of creators. And that's super powerful. And making them, think about you afterwards, want to go back and see your content. Um, and
Well, and
want,
like you said, just showing like a human side. Like when
yes.
I do my normal weekly podcast, I don't highly edit it. All it's warts and all. You get to see if I mispronounce a word. I'm not cutting that.
Yeah.
This is who I am. This is you'll either like it or you won't. But it humanizes the show as opposed to like a super polished everything in its place kind of thing. And I'm with you. I think
Absolutely.
that's really important.
Yeah, and kind of bringing it full circle to back to the platforms, and you're always talking about them needing to show transparency. I think we'd like to see that kind of attitude from the platforms as well. Like it's okay if you've made a mistake. It's okay if you tried this fee structure and everyone hates it and now you got to change to something else. Like just tell us.
Right.
It's fine. We know we're struggling too.
Yep.
Like
When
we're
I just
making it through the day too.
Yeah, I just talked about that on Monday because Vinted in the UK rolled out their Vinted Pro, and there was an error, whether it was an error of omission or commission, I don't know. But what happened was essentially that they were showing the equivalent of people's social security numbers on their public facing profiles,
Ooh.
and it was really quickly called to their attention, and they just stood up, they owned it, they said, hey, we made a mistake, we fixed it, here it is, we apologize. And they didn't try to sweep it under the rug, they didn't try to blame it on a glitch, they just said it was a mistake and it's fixed. And I
Yeah.
thought that was really a powerful thing to do, because we've seen platforms that have had issues and they're like, oh, it was, it was somebody else's fault kind of thing.
And how did that change how you felt about them? Like, didn't it make you feel, wow, like I have more respect for them. They're like
Right.
owning up their mistakes,
Yep.
That's powerful.
Yep. Kapow Eagle says, community members, anyone here that sell both media and non-media items on Etsy would like to seek some knowledge from you without taking from this conversation. So if you haven't seen that in the chat, go ahead and put that if you have any comments on that. I mostly sell media items over there.
Mm.
I'm not sure, is your question on shipping or what specifically you might have some issues over there on Etsy, but it's an unusual platform for that kind of thing. Talk to me a little bit about, with all of that on your plate, you have multiple platforms, multiple social media presences. How do you budget your time? What's a day in the life
Oh
of
man.
Annette look like?
I'm gonna come clean right away, be superhuman. I have a very chaotic discipline. A probably undiagnosed ADHD, neither here nor there, but it's yeah, I have a couple of things throughout the week that are kind of like touch points. So like Mondays, I'm always doing shipping, listening to Galaxy CDs, new episode. Wednesdays, if I have a lot of stuff, I'll probably ship again. If I don't, my next shipping day will be Friday. Um, and then yeah, it's just kind of like it changes all the time because again, chaotic discipline.
Right.
I need different things going on at
Right.
different times. Sometimes I have things that need to be cleaned, bags that I'm rehabbing. So if I'm doing that, I might create content at the same time because that's what a lot of my content is about. If I don't have stuff like that, I may go sourcing. Some days, if I'm just like, oh, there's too much of a mess going on. I need to do cleaning. I need to clean throughout the day. Um, I'll just go to my rack and be like, all right, I'm going to photograph today. I'm going to process it. And that's probably not the way to go about it, by the way, for anyone watching. It's not, I'm
Pro
not
tip, don't do what
organized.
I'm doing.
I'm not as organized as you, Ryan. I wish I were. And I probably, if I had someone else working with me in the business, I would be. I tend to do well when I have a structured, like, with somebody else. But by myself, it's complete chaotic discipline. But I do make sure, again, every day that I'm listing at least a couple of things
Right.
and going through, every day I do something in the business to further the business. So I can
Right.
confidently say that I'm very consistent. I probably work every day of the week, to be honest. I was talking to a friend about this recently too, and that's not, I don't say that as a bad thing. Like, a lot of what I do is on my phone. I'm editing videos, it's on my phone. I'm, sharing listings or negotiating with people, it's on my phone. Everything that I do is on my phone. So it's hard for me to say, like, oh, I spend this much time in the business,
Right.
or do this every day. But I can confidently say that I work every day.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm always, um, you know, keeping track of what's going on social media, or answering questions, or, taking offers. But I don't mind that. I
Right.
much prefer this to what I was doing before, which was
Right.
working in corporate. Because it's, my day is much more interesting, much more varied. I could take a break if I want to.
Yeah.
If I'm not feeling good on a certain day, I can do less work. If I'm feeling great, sometimes I do so much work, like
Right.
2 days worth of work. That works for me. I know that doesn't work for everyone, but that's kind of the beauty of what we do, right? There's
Right.
different ways to structure yourself. You can really apply this to what works well for you. And so far, this has been working okay for me. Could
Yeah.
I be more organized? Probably.
Well, but you've got the must do stuff.
Yeah.
I know I have to list, I know I have to ship, and to
Yes.
do those things I have to, I have to source, I have to clean. So all those steps are in there. The beauty of it is we don't have somebody standing over us saying you need to take 600 photographs today. If you're not feeling like doing photographs, you can go do something else. And I'm despite the appearance of being organized, I'm very much the same way. If I
Oh,
don't, I know what I want to get done in a day, but I may not do it in any particular order. I may go walk the dog at 10 a.m. and do listings at 10 o'clock at night. It varies, but you have that flexibility as long as you've
yeah.
got enough kind of self discipline to know I got to get these things done at some point in the day. The actual structure of it, I don't think is all that important.
It's so good to hear that because I see a lot of content out there, like, you should run your business this way, or, structure yourself, streamline yourself, become the most efficient. Is the way that I do things the most efficient? Definitely not. But I get things done. I'm
Right.
very happy. Those things are also valuable too.
Yes. That's
Yeah.
one of the reasons I chose to get into this was to have that flexibility to determine, like you just said, here's a window of time where I'm feeling like being really focused and I'll knock out 20 or 30 listings
Hmm.
at a rip and then just get on with something else. And there's other days, man, I don't feel like sitting in front of this photo booth for 6 hours today. I'm going to go do something else. So,
Yeah.
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 And
You
there's
know,
always something to do. It's
There's
not like,
always something to do. Yes, absolutely. And let's remember, humans are not wired, right, to live with this kind of constant work. And that's probably, younger generations, even younger than me, are bringing this up more and more in the corporate workplace, and just in life, like work balance in general. Like, you know, we're willing to work, but we don't want it to be everything all the time. There's a lot more to life
right. We
than
don't live to work. We work to live. It's a
yes,
very different
exactly.
philosophy. And there's probably in my generation, there's a lot fewer people that feel that way. I know my father in particular has always been kind of like, what are you doing when I talk about some of the decisions I've made in my life? But I'm much more interested in having a lifestyle that I like
Yes.
as opposed to I did the corporate thing and I made all kinds of money and whatever, but I didn't enjoy it. I wasn't fulfilled. I wasn't happy. And now I got all this stuff like doing this. I love doing this, and it's technically it's part of my job. I make a little bit of money on YouTube,
Yeah.
so this is part of my work. And you do get in the trap of social media or whatever, not feeling like traditional work, because I spend enough time
Yes.
in the traditional workforce that when I'm doing something like this, I'm like, oh, this wasn't productive. But in a way, it still is. It's still work. So
You bring up such a good point there, Ryan. I feel the same way. Like, even when I love doing social media content, and I do hope one day it can bring in more revenue for me and be part of my business. But it never feels like work, you know?
right,
Like I'm always jazzed about it. Like, oh, I have this great idea for a reel, or like I can do this educational series and it's going to help a lot of people. And like, that's the feeling that I'm chasing. I've
right,
learned at my point in life, like you, I've done the corporate thing. It didn't make me happy. It made me a lot of money, didn't make me happy, didn't give me a lot of time in my day to pursue, the things that I loved or was interested in. So now I'm constantly using that feeling of like, what am I excited about? And like pointing my internal compass that way
right.
and chasing that, because that's where I found the most joy, the most rewarding experiences that I've had with people online has all been because I've been doing things that I was excited about and
Yep.
interested in. And it feels so good when people comment like, wow, this really helped me, or I
Yeah.
saw your content online and I cleaned my bag and I flipped it for this much money. And
Yep.
it's like, whoa, like you'd never know the impact you're having just
Right.
by being your authentic self and following your passion.
Yep. And I say it seems like every week on this show that if one person leaves a comment that they got something out of what I did today,
Yeah.
that is success for me. And you don't know how many people you impact. I was hopping around on Whatnot last night, just going in and out of different shows just to kind of see how different people were doing things. And probably a third of the shows I popped in, people knew who I was. I'm literally brand new to Whatnot, but I used the same name, Galaxy CDs Rocks. And I hopped in on one and they're like, oh, Ryan, if you're not watching his podcast, you need to go follow him on YouTube. And I had
Fantastic.
no idea who this person was. And that to me was just really fulfilling to know that there are people out there who appreciate what you do and that get something out of it. It's worth more than money to me.
I 100% agree, Ryan, and I hope you know how important the work you're doing is to so many resellers. It's such an important touchstone. You do such a great job of giving us the news every week. There's definitely so many weeks where I tune in and I'm like, oh gosh, I would have not known that this change had happened, or I would have not known that this platform had done this if I didn't hear Ryan talking about it
Right.
today. So yeah, that's wonderful. It's a great feeling.
Yep. Kapow Eagle says shipping had to cancel multiple orders yesterday because buyer chose media mail, removed media mail. Now all media buyers must pay ground advantage. Yeah, there's something. I It depends on if you're using shipping profiles over there and how you break those out. I haven't been able to look at mine, but I've not ever had that happen. But I know when we talked last week that that was an issue. So I don't know if that's something on the back end over at Etsy. We need to try to get somebody from Etsy to come on and talk about how their shipping profiles work because
Oh my gosh.
yeah, because
I
that's
have a question for you on Etsy, actually. I know it's a bit off topic, but I heard now they're prioritizing listings that have shipping that's $6 and below.
yes. They announced that they were going to do that. I've had several people reach out. They're like, "Did you cover this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it was months ago." They kind of hinted that that was going to be a change in their algorithm. That their studies have shown that customers prefer shipping costs less than $6. So now they are going to prioritize those in search. Now, they did say in the initial announcement, I haven't looked, I think it goes into effect this week, that if you were using calculated shipping, that you would be exempt from that because you had the exact sizes and weights. And if the thing was going to cost $12 to ship because it was heavy, that was
Wow.
all good. But if you were using like your own flat rate and you were just charging $7.95 for everything, that you were going to be deprioritized in search. So yeah,
So as I said earlier, primarily sell vintage Coach bags over there, and many of them are over a pound, and I can't ship with $6. So I'm like
right.
curious, are they wanting sellers to eat that cost? I use Sendle. Sendle integrates with eBay and
Right.
Etsy. And if you don't know Sendle, for your listeners, I highly recommend go check them out. Really great shipping rates over there. Anyway, they integrate directly with Etsy. So I use their shipping tiers to think about, like, all right, what do I need to charge for my
Right.
item? And it's typically around $9.99 for like a item that's 2 pounds or more. So I don't know what to do over there. I mean,
Right.
again, it's not a huge part of my business, but I'm just wondering what's their strategy here, because a lot of people sell things that you can't ship for $6 anymore. On top of the prices have gone up.
Yeah.
Now we have the holiday surge. Like, what is the thinking there?
Right. Yeah. Don't get it. I know on the initial episode there were a lot of comments that people would just lower their shipping price and then raise their retail price to account for it. So
Okay.
net, it's again, it goes back to the $5.99 versus $6, whatever kind of thing. It's a psychological,
Mm,
they're saying that anything over $6 puts off buyers. And I don't know. I've talked about it on this show all the time. The big push was always for free shipping. You should just do free shipping. It's a better marketing tool. But when, as you just said, prices
mhm.
started going up twice a year, I was like, I'm out on that program because it gets to a point where it just gets too expensive. So I went to customer paid shipping and I
Yeah.
didn't notice a blip in my
Yeah.
business. So,
It's just it's so odd because it's almost the exact like opposite strategy that Poshmark is doing. Poshmark is
right.
saying, "Oh, buyers will pay more at checkout," and Etsy's like, "No, no, we've seen they won't pay more, and we're gonna, deprioritize higher
But you
shipping
do
costs."
notice that their Posh Pass shipping rate is $5.95, which would be under that $6 threshold.
Touche.
So
Yes.
there
Yes,
is
you're right.
potentially some method to the madness, and that may be a good way for them to experiment with that and say, hey, we're going to roll this out to our ambassadors as a trial run to see if it makes a difference in who's getting a sale. Is $5.95 way better than $7.90, whatever they're getting? And yeah,
But Ryan, what's gonna happen next year when I tune into your podcast and you're telling me Poshmark has announced that Posh Pass is now costing, I don't know, $20 a month or
right. Yep.
something, you
Well,
know?
yeah, they're going to try to make it up somewhere. I have no doubt of that. But again, would is that a trade-off you would make? Would you do you do enough transaction volume? If it, let's just say it was $20 a month to participate in it.
I would have to put on my math hat and dig in, but I think off the cuff, it probably would be worth it just because they're calculating that 6% fee off of the shipping and the sales tax. So,
Right.
ergo, it makes sense that a lower shipping cost over time will result in lower overall paid fees.
Right.
Um, and let me just throw a wrench into this. So, what does this mean for Poshmark promoted closets? Is that gonna go away? Like, is promoted closets gonna still make sense if you're paying for Posh Pass?
Right.
I don't see sellers paying for a fee for Posh Pass, paying to promote their closets, and now paying, fees on shipping and tax as well on the total order costs.
Well,
Uh,
you had better hope that they're not looking at eBay for that because when and you've talked about this before, you've said that the original 20% fee on Posh was not out of line with the other platforms when you consider the fact that
yes.
at eBay, for instance, you may be paying for a store subscription, then you're paying your fees, which have always been calculated, not always, but since the early 2000s on everything.
Yeah.
Now you're doing promoted listings to get your stuff seen because if
Mhm.
you're not surfacing in search. Now you're maybe doing offsite ads as well. And all of a sudden, you're 20, 21, 22% fees over there with a fee for this and a fee for that and a fee for ads. And it gets to be a lot.
It
So if
is,
that is the
yeah.
model that someone like Posh might be looking at, it could get to be really interesting.
I
Not to be a
really
Debbie
hope they're
Downer,
not
but
going there. I can't even fathom paying all that stuff now and then having to take returns for basically any reason. There's a cost associated with that for sellers as well. That's nuts. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very interesting times, Ryan. It's
Yep.
very interesting times in reselling. It's not what it used to be, and I
And that's what
really
makes the mercari thing so interesting, because there's nothing. They aren't doing, there's no ads, there's no promotions. You can do discounts, but you can't pay to do like a premium listing, and there's
right.
just no fees. Everything's being borne by the buyer. If they could figure out how to generate some traffic, they could really become a force.
I agree with that 100%. And I would say the same for other platforms like Grilled and Curtsy and district marketplaces. They've got two things going for them, right? Their fees are lower, but it's a simpler overall structure to understand as a buyer and a seller. And I think that the eBay and Poshmark are underestimating how much convenience and simplicity means to users in general on their platform, right? When Poshmark was new on the scene, one of the things that drove a lot of people from eBay over to Poshmark, even though they had a higher fee probably at the time, was it's just simple. It's a simple fee
Right.
to understand, 20% on this order total. And the shipping was really simple. Like that simplicity drove a lot of traffic, which when at the time, and I guess arguably to this day, eBay is a bit of an algebra lesson
Right.
to figure things out. I mean, I've been selling on eBay since 2004, casually and then more seriously later on. And I've never been able to predict what I'm going to profit from an item until that sale comes through. I have a vague idea and I,
Right.
do my sourcing and my calculations based off that, but I really don't know exactly what I'm being charged. And we knew that on Poshmark. We used to
Yeah.
know that on Poshmark. And
Right.
it's powerful as a seller, whether you're casual or professional. That's powerful because people, of course, just like businesses, we're just interested in what are we going to profit and is that going to be worth my time?
Yep.
And very understandable. Now, you've got a casual seller like my dad, for example, who's just selling things from his basement, that he's trying to get rid of.
Right.
um, he's got no idea what he's going to profit off of an
Yeah.
item. And he's not going to stick around to do the calculations to try to maybe estimate what
Right.
the sale is going to result in.
Right.
So that's powerful. Going back to what we were saying before, I think this is going to drive more sellers than buyers off the platform.
Yeah. Liz says she'd pay the $20 for Posh Pass, no questions asked. I think sellers that are promoting would have no problem continuing.
Really?
And I've had mixed results from promoted, though, so she quit 2 weeks ago. So there you go.
Promoted listings has had such a weird review history over there. I've seen people say it's worth it. I've seen a lot more people say it's not, and I don't get it. I don't understand how they're keeping track of it. Which is my problem with eBay as well, is like, where's the oversight on these promoted
Yeah.
closets, and you've talked a little bit about this with Etsy as well. It's like, okay, well, how do you know what listings are getting promoted and that they sold through the promoted flow? Um, I don't know. They're telling us it's sold on promoted
Right.
listings, and then with eBay, I think I heard you talk about this one time on your podcast where you were saying that not only are they charging you now to promote, but then if somebody clicks on that item, it's like they had a term for it, like a peripheral promoted listing, where
I th-
maybe they clicked on it but they didn't buy it, but it brought them to your
right.
storefront and then they bought something else, so then you're still getting charged on that item, like
For 30 days.
for 30 days. Like,
30 days. I think they
where's
called
the
it Halo,
oversight?
which is a really probably a disingenuous term. I think they called it Halo
Halo,
clicks.
that's what it
Yes.
was. Is that fair to you? Do you think that's fair?
No, I don't. And I talked about it at the time as someone who is in their affiliate program. And all the affiliate programs pretty much work like this. So if you click my affiliate link on something, that cookie is good for anything they buy on eBay, whether that's the item that they originally clicked on or not, for 24 hours. But if you click on their promoted ad, that cookie's good for 30 days.
What?
It's good to be boss.
That's not fair. What?
uh, right?
Come on.
It's wild. Liz says, I got a second message here. If I had excellent results, then I'd happily continue. And that and what you were just saying, and we talked about it offline, the lack of consistency and from seller to seller, from week to week, you'll see some sellers are having terrific weeks and other sellers are really struggling, and then the next week they have like essentially flip-flopped. I mean, it's just some are doing gangbusters on Mercari with the new program, and others have said they haven't sold anything in weeks. It's weird how it impacts
Mm.
some people and not others. And you would think there would be more consistency across that, but definitely not the case.
I think it comes down to do are people listing things that are desirable? That's a huge factor in if you're going to see more or less traffic regardless of all this craziness. Um but again, like what's the oversight on these programs? Like I don't, that's always been one of my biggest issues is like I get like I could pay more for this and I might look at the numbers and say, well, it's worth it because I'm getting more sales,
Right.
more revenue. So maybe is that all that matters? But how do you know when like that they're being honest about the listings that are from a halo effect or from a direct click? Um, do you just trust them? I guess people just trust them.
Right.
I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
sure if I opened a store on eBay tomorrow and I started moving my inventory over there and I started promoted listings, I'm sure I would see a surge in sales. But
Yes.
is that worth it? And do I trust them?
Right.
I don't know.
Going back to where we started with the whole transparency thing. And they've
Yeah.
got, they've got all their charts and their graphs that you can go in and look at your advertising performance and your clicks and your impressions and all that. But they control the raw data.
It feels
So
a little
you're,
Orwellian in
yeah,
that regard to me. It's like they're in charge and they're controlling the valve of sales almost. And
yeah,
we just have to trust that they're going to open and close that valve based off of their rules that
yeah.
they are controlling.
Well, and when I did my first go round with promoted listings a little over a year ago, I made the comment that, my business did see an increase. But when I looked at like the total number of listings sold, I assume that there's a pretty good chunk of those that would have probably sold organically because I didn't see my sales didn't double. They went up
Right.
maybe a third, which is good. I will definitely take it and I'm willing to pay a little extra to have that done. But I don't think it's the be all end all, other than the fact that so many other people are doing it now. If you're not in the game, you run the risk of being left behind a little bit, which is, of course, their plan. But
It's really despicable. It's a little insidious, honestly. And I'm thinking of eBay primarily when I say this because, initially you were paying a platform fee for them to do all these things. You're paying the platform fee for them to advertise, for them to host your listing and facilitate the sale. I understand that over time that probably got more expensive. And so they would need to raise their fees. Totally logical. But now to do this promoted listing and this, pay per click and people with a store get prioritized over people with no stores. Like I don't promote at all. I don't have a store, but if I list an item on eBay, it could be a week before I get one or two views on an item.
right.
That's how bad it is now. And it
Well, but
used
I'm
to
not
be I could list
convinced.
something and get 10 views like
Yeah.
in an hour.
Yeah. I'm not convinced that their view tally is right because I've had stuff that has watchers that doesn't have any views. And that's literally impossible. Somebody would have had to view that to watch it at some point. So there's something isn't quite right there.
Oh my gosh.
Liz says, I'm the opposite. I love the ability to pay for advertising when I want it. And I don't have a problem with the program per se. It's again, like you said, the perception of I don't know if the data is really legit or not.
Right.
And not to be too whatever about eBay, their track record of being forthcoming and transparent is not the best.
Oh dear.
So is that subtle? Is that gentle enough on eBay? It makes you wonder
Yeah.
about it's to go back to the example I used earlier with Vinted. Made a mistake, had a problem, owned it, fixed it. Here it is, hands to God. It was our fault. We're moving on. It's fixed.
Mhm.
But they were out front about what it was. They reacted super quick. It didn't languish for days or weeks on end. It was fixed within 24 hours. That inspires a lot of confidence.
Now, if Vinted were to start charging promoted listings, would you have more confidence in them
Oh,
than,
absolutely.
say, a platform like eBay just based off that
Yeah.
reaction? Yeah.
Assuming that is the way they have done business, and that's my only experience with them is over the last couple of weeks, kind of watching as they've made these announcements and gone through this. So I don't know, maybe they haven't been transparent in other areas, but
Mm.
in that little window, that's what I've seen. And yes, I would be willing to say without hesitation that I would trust them.
Yeah, yeah. And going back to Liz's comment, I'm not against paying for advertising, but I was already paying for advertising, right? With that initial platform fee. So I never understood why eBay didn't just go, you know what, we were charging you 10%, now we're charging you 15 because costs have gone up, right? Instead of coming up with this pay per click or promoted listings or whatever program, like just raise the overall platform fees and just come out and say like, hey, costs have gone up, hosting costs have gone up, the
Right.
platform's grown, we need more revenue. But they didn't do that, and probably in large part due because they went public and then they had shareholders that they were beholden to and they need to show growth and profit year over year. That really for me was the downfall of trusting eBay
Yeah.
back in the day. It's been a few years since then. But I was conversely back to Poshmark. I was very excited when they were once again bought by Naver and became private because I thought, oh God, okay, now we've got the shareholder nonsense off the table and they can focus on making the improvements that people have really been wanting all of these years on the app. Course, that's not what's happened necessarily,
Right.
but we hope. We live in hope over here.
Right. Well, and I made that comment when Naver bought them. They invested whatever it was, $1 billion or some ridiculous amount of of money. And I said at the time, at some point in the future, they're going to start to need to recoup that investment.
Yes,
And I feel like that
this is
time maybe
how.
has arrived.
Yes, you're 100% right, Ryan.
The old man's picks 100% of the benefits of working in this industry is flexibility. Absolutely. And speaking of, I have probably consumed more than enough of your time for today.
No
I
worries.
really appreciate it. I usually try to keep these at an hour, and we always end up at an hour and 20 because the conversations are good. But um, do you have any closing thoughts that you would like to share before we get out of here for the day?
I mean, just, steady at the wheel, guys. Let's just see how this change is gonna pan out in the next couple of weeks and then make a decision if you need to pivot or not. That's what I'm gonna do. But as always, don't put all your eggs in one basket either. I've seen a lot of people talking about this as well. Like if a platform makes crazy changes and it's devastating to your business, you're probably relying on them too heavily. So cross post, checkout grilled, curtsy, vestiaire collective, district marketplaces, there's lots of other game in town. If Poshmark isn't working for you, if you think eBay is too crazy, that's certainly what I'm going to do. Is for sure going to be cross listing and checking out other platforms.
Yep. And that goes back again to just wrap this whole thing up to what he just mentioned, the flexibility. You
Yeah.
aren't locked in. It's not just Amazon and eBay. You've got a lot of choices today where
Yes.
you can choose to list depending on what your items are and what you're comfortable with. So you're you're probably somewhat still held captive to the biggest ones. You probably want to be on eBay despite all of the issues that they may have,
Yeah.
but you have other ways to supplement what they do. You can, if I do 5% over here and 5% over there and 6% over here, all of a sudden that's added up to a pretty significant increase. It's one of the reasons I talk about cross posting almost every week. My business 20% of my business is off eBay, and that's 20% of my income I would not have otherwise.
Wow.
So it's definitely worth doing.
Yeah.
So that's my
Diversify your income streams. That
yep.
is, I think, the closing thought of the day.
Yep. Well, thank you so much, Annette, for coming out and hanging out with us. Thank you to everybody who was in the chat. As always, I appreciate your support. If you got something out of this, I'm supposed to say this, I know, at the beginning of the video, not at the end, but hit that thumbs up button and let the YouTube algorithm know this was a productive use of all of our time. With that, my friends, it's time to sell. If you don't have anything to do tonight, I am going to go live on Whatnot for my first show. I've got like just 12 science fiction paperbacks I'm going to try to sell over there just to kind of see how it goes. So if you're not doing anything, come join me. There's a link at the top of the chat. Thanks, everybody. You have been listening to the Galaxy CDs Rocks and Flips Reseller Talk podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will catch you again next time.